to doing our fire marshal update?
Well, as you all know, Ken Rollinson is here, and I'm going to have him do that. He is one of our fire inspector, public safety educator, fire investigator, videographer, Facebook manager. He is
A power washer extraordinaire.
Yeah. While he's getting set up, I wanted to just put in a quick plug. We have a badge spinning this Friday for 2 of our new firefighters that are getting on probation at 3 p.m. here at City Hall. And then on Monday, we have the new Pierce truck christening at Fire Station 1 at 2 o'clock to make sure we haven't confused anybody. So 3 on Friday here, 2 at Station 1 on Monday.
That's Station 1, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Chief Smith's out of the office this week, and so he asked me to put together, he picked a topic, so try to hold back your excitement. We're going to try to do the best we can. Lots of pictures, but wanted just to give you guys an update on our more enhanced smoke alarm inspection program that we've been doing here the past couple of years. So, and this is, of course, exactly what we're looking for. Is operating smoke detectors. They've been around for decades now. But critically important in the life safety of anybody involved in fire. Study after study shows that. So I don't want to bore you with the word statistics, but unfortunately a lot of this data on a nationwide scale, it does go a lot to statistics, but just some common information that everybody knows. Smoke alarms provide additional time for residents to escape during a fire. When smoke alarms were first commercially available in the late 70s, early 80s at a reasonable price where people actually started putting them in, our fires were drastically different than they are now. Just the chemical products that we bring into our houses with a lot more synthetics, plastics, just the time scale has changed. So any extra additional seconds, minutes that you can get through smoke alarms are just that much more important. So it's one of the reasons that we focus so heavily on smoke alarms. Just another statistic, and you're going to hear me throw that word out a lot. As much as I hate the word statistic, I prefer just hard and cold facts, but a lot of this information is what got us where we are and what's moving us forward. But the risk of dying during a fire is cut in half by having a minimum of 1 working smoke alarm that is properly installed in your home. And they're not hard to put in at all. Smoke alarms are inexpensive, they're reliable, they operate around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are a couple exceptions to that we'll talk about, but they do have a life expectancy. But for cost, you're just not going to get anything less expensive. It comes down to, if you were to get just your typical moderately priced, decent, not the cheap one, but a decent smoke alarm, and you were to factor in changing the battery out at least once a year, over the lifespan it costs less than a penny a day to have a smoke alarm in your house, which is incredible considering they were extremely expensive when they first came out. But what makes smoke alarms much different than sprinkler systems or any other fire protection is that they're so easy, anybody can install them. It takes just a few minutes to actually install it. It takes just a few seconds to test it. So again, this is something that we can actually preach to people. They may actually take us up on it. We're always preaching for sprinkler systems, any sort of suppression, but realistically, who's going to spend thousands of dollars to retroactively put one in their house? Whereas even a 4-bedroom home, it would require multiple smoke alarms throughout the house. Less than $100, you'd be able to completely protect your family with those. So again, the statistics. National statistics, we did such a good job back in the 80s of getting people to actually install the smoke alarms in their house, and obviously now, years and years later, they're required by code. But and the one thing I hate about this statistic is that it was done by a phone survey through the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So this wasn't actually going out and testing or checking to make sure they're here. It was just calling people and asking them, hey, do you have a working smoke alarm in your house? But 96 to 97%, which sounds like an incredible amount, and still a very high number of homes in America actually have at least 1 smoke alarm installed. Where it starts getting a little bit scary is that NFPA actually has gone out and done some inspections on homes that have been there for a while, and 1 out of 5 houses that actually have smoke detectors installed, they're not working properly. Either the battery's dead, the detector has just exceeded its life expectancy. So you've got a 1 in 5 chance of thinking that you have adequate coverage in your house, but not actually having them. That's kind of scary. And then only 40% of homes actually have smoke alarms installed in every bedroom. So going back to fires growing quicker nowadays than they did back when they were only required to have one in the house, only about 40% of the homes in America have what we would consider nowadays adequate protection. And then on average, 2,300 people die every year in homes without smoking alarms. And as an investigator, that is one of the things we look for, especially during a fatality fire or an injury, is were these people notified, and if they weren't, what was the reason behind that? So that's twice the number of people who are actually injured if they had a smoke alarm present. But if you really dig a little bit deeper and you start counting on people who are not mobilely impaired or not young in age or older or have some sort of mobility impairment, if you have one working smoke detector and you are a middle-aged person that can get out of the bed when that thing goes off, your survival rate just skyrockets. That's why we push these things so hard. So this was an interesting fact, and this kind of is, why don't we just go out and check every single house now, call it a day? Wouldn't we just be better off? Well, out of the box, go to Home Depot, pick up a smoke alarm. Out of the box, the failure rate on smoke alarms is about 2 to 3%. Whether it just sat on the shelf for too long, battery is dead, whatever tolerance is in the manufacturing process, but out of the box, that's why it's so critical to check them just even when you install them. At 10 years, the failure rate's approximately 30%. This is also when manufacturers, NFPA, fire departments will tell you it's time to go ahead and change them. If you have a typical 3-bedroom house and you probably have multiple smoke alarms installed, one of them at that 10-year mark is probably not working, but the other 3 are. So you still have some adequate level of protection. At 15 years, it drops to about 50-50 chance of it working, and at 30 years, you are almost guaranteed to have a non-working smoke alarm. The button may still work, but to actually test it with smoke, you're looking at almost a 100% failure rate. So if that doesn't shock you, if your home was built in the 80s or before and you've never actually changed out your smoke alarm, pull out your smartphone, send yourself an email, go home tonight, check it, call us if you live here in Euless, we'll come out and we'll do it for free. But it's critically important that after that 10-year mark, you change out your smoke alarms for that very reason.
Is there a way that we could encourage the builders to put smoke alarms in new houses?
Now that's a requirement. On new houses, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, we're not as worried about those. Now you still have that 10-year mark, so my home was built in 97, so we're still approaching that 15-year mark where half of those smoke detectors need to be replaced. Most homeowners don't realize that. They see a smoke detector up there, one goes off every once in a while, the battery chirps. We just think that we're adequately protected, and a lot of times we're not. So the statistics I gave you on the national averages, well, if we were to apply those here to Euless, just to kind of show you, and David Allen helped me kind of figure out a number to kind of work with, but guesstimating that we have approximately 22,700 residential units in Euless. Even if we were to accept that 96 to 97% of numbers that have them installed, we're still dealing with 700 residential units that have no protection whatsoever. And we do run into that from time to time, especially like in the Midway Square area or older neighborhoods where they weren't required at the time the house was built. Maybe it's still the original owner, so that's one of the reasons education is so important. But then at any given time, we could have up to 4,500 homes that have the smoke alarms installed, but they're not working properly. So that, yeah, everybody's kind of going, eek, yeah, that's our job. That's why we're here. So how are we addressing that as a fire department? Well, fortunately, you guys are in a city where we understand the importance of that, and we've got several programs. So we've divided it up into 2 areas: our single-family residences, where we don't have as much pool. And again, education, I know James mentioned that during his presentation, education is always our primary goal, because we can't force our way into 100% of the houses, but we can try to educate a high percentage of the people. So whether it's through signs that we put out twice a year, just reminding people at their neighborhood entrances that the fire department wants you to check the batteries. Believe it or not, our clown program at the schools, I've got 2 children, and I can tell you that if my oldest is bugging me about something over and over again, he's probably going to get his way. So if we can teach thousands of kids in a 1-week period of time, go home, tell your parents you've got to check your smoke detectors, we're getting our message into the houses through the children, which is an extremely effective way. Same thing with open house, Arbor Days.
So Ken, we also have a program or policy in our department. We're on a call.
Get to that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Our operational crews also on non-critical emergency responses, we will test the smoke alarms as part of our protocols, which means if we come out and you fell down and just needed a hand getting back up, or you don't need to be taken to the hospital right away, while we're in the house, we're going to go ahead and check your smoke alarms. Just customer service, it gets us in the house, we're already there, you've already called us out. And we're the experts, so people will go ahead and let us take a look at them. So, and that's relatively new. I'm not saying it hasn't been done, but we weren't actually tracking it before 2013. So last year there were 242 houses where we actually tested their smoke alarms, and in 33 of those instances, so over 10% of them, we found issues that we needed to correct. Each apparatus will have a go bag with smoke alarms, 9-volt batteries, and a small cordless drill to install those right then and there, so they don't have to go home on a Friday night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and wait till us to get in on Monday morning to actually go install them. So, and then in 2014, we've already tested them at 70 houses so far and corrected 6 violations. So we're checking. This had nothing to do with this, but it was a picture of the fit because the smoke detector's in the background. If we're out there, chances are it's going to be checked when it's appropriate to do so. If you've got a heart attack, we're not going to put that on hold so that we can check your smoke detectors. But, and then it sounds kind of morbid, but one of the most impactful ways to actually get in there is after we do have a fire in a neighborhood is to go do a block walk in that community. Nobody thinks a fire will happen to them, but when you actually, have that smell of smoke in the air, or you see that that house burn down the street, all of a sudden you don't mind letting the fire department come in and possibly get the carpet a little dirty to check. So it's not uncommon for us after a residential fire to go out and do a block walk. These are some of the batteries. If we change the battery, we just kind of collect them for just impact, and we keep them in a jar that we'll show off at open house or at Arbor Days. But we are hitting about that 20% average. When we go into a house, we are finding out that about 20% of them are not working properly. So,
Ken, when you check them, are you just hitting the button, or are you checking?
depends. We do both. The cans of smoke, the fake smoke, it's a little expensive, and also sometimes it doesn't clear very well. So if it's way up high and I were to spray it right now and I don't have a way of actually clearing it, you're going to have a beeping problem for a while. So the button on there, all the button does is just to test the actual internal mechanics of it. It's still safer and better to test with a can of smoke, but it's not always practical. Multifamily residences. We've got a lot of those in Euless, as everyone's aware of. This is where we've really kind of stepped up. Our current goal, our current policy is to hit a minimum of 20% of every apartment complex every year. So every 5 years, we should be in every unit, which is great for any number of reasons, just kind of seeing the condition of the apartments on the inside as well. But that goes for occupied and unoccupied units, both. And a big part of that is educating management and maintenance personnel. They'll put up 20 if they tell you, if they think they have to, they'll put up 20, but they won't put them in the right location. So we've actually, in the little lazy things shown up. But you see this little paper right here. What we did is we kind of laminated these and gave these to the maintenance guys. And basically, if you were to stick this on the ceiling level, the red areas are the no areas to install it, and the green area is actually where it should be. So right away, they have something they can carry with them that tells them exactly where they're supposed to be placed. On the back side of that, it has all the locations, all the requirements, the type that they're supposed to be installing. And our maintenance guys have gotten really, really good at putting them up where they need to be. We've expanded, like I said, our smoke alarm inspection years ago. It was just a small percentage. Part of that is also due just to the addition of that minimum housing program. They're taking kind of a lot of our plate that we're not having to look at so closely because they are. So that gives us more time to actually go inside the apartments and look at these as well. This coincides with changes in state law here. September of last year is when this new state law went into effect. But it required that smoke alarms were not only installed in the hallways, like they were in so many of the apartments built in the 80s and early 90s, but the additional, even retroactively, additional smoke alarms be installed in each living room, each sleeping room, sorry. So if you've got a 3-bedroom unit, you're going to have a minimum of 4 smoke alarms installed in your apartment. So. And then any new installed smoke alarm, I don't know if you guys have seen it, obviously we catch it because it's talking about our profession, but there's been a lot of controversy in the type of smoke alarms. Some work better on the the smoldering fires and somewhat better on the quick flaming fires. So they have the dual sensor technology, and the new state law is written in such a way that that is the type of smoke alarm that must be installed. They're a little bit pricier, but it's the best protection that's available out there right now. So 20 to 25 bucks a piece, which doesn't sound like a lot unless you're like Westdale Hills where you've got thousands of units that you've got to retroactively change. So there was a big rush on the end when they were still allowed to use the old ones to get the old ones installed, which was legal at the time, but anything you see now will be the newer technology. In 2013, what that looked like, we tested over 4,000 smoke alarms. We found over 217 violations, and if your math is much better than mine, you probably realize right away, wow, that seems like a very low percentage. Part of the reason for that was just getting out there, talking to all the apartments, talking to all the maintenance guys. They knew we were coming. They knew we were going to hit them hard. They did a really good job of jumping out there and trying to beat us to tell them to have to do it. As you can see now, 2014, we're kind of trending up a little bit as far as percentage goes. We've already tested over 1,000 smoke alarms, and we're as of last week, that these numbers don't reflect, we're probably already pretty close to that 200 violation number. And all that is a sign of tenants and stuff actually living in the apartments, taking out the batteries, removing the smoke detectors, and that's one of the many things that we do look for. So wanted to close just showing you guys what we want to see when we come into a fire. Obviously, we never want to see a fire. But in each instance, these are smoke alarms that did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were installed where they were supposed to be. They were maintained like they were supposed to be, and they actually alerted the tenants and got them out of the house. Now, some of these were at night, actually woke people up. Some of these were during the day, but even during the day, you may sense the fire through, sound, smell, whatever. But hearing that loud chirping noise will also get your attention relatively quick. So, with that, does anybody have any questions on smoke alarms? Yes, yes, sir.
I think that the fact that the fire department is willing to go into people's homes and check their smoke alarms and replace batteries and things like that it's a marvelous service to our community. And I think that we need to have a program where we ask neighborhood associations or area associations, however it may be configured, to set aside a day where the people in that community, in that neighborhood, know that the service will be available, and have the fire department schedule a day to go into a community and go house by house to the neighborhood homes and have them inspected. I would love to have that done. I know I've had the fire department come out and stop a cheaping smoke alarm because it was so high, there was no way I could reach it. And they were very kind to do that, and I really appreciate it.
I had to call them one night because mine went out, and they came and they said, okay, we got it fixed, and by the time they got to the front door, it started beeping again. I think we tried 3 times, and then they said, we're changing it out, and it was one of the new ones.
There you go. Percentage of those right off the shelf. Just
But I know we have our neighborhood association has a police officer who gives us input from time to time, but I don't think we have anything from the fire department coming in and talking to us about this, and I think it would be a great service.
They work with the homeowner association.
Also, setting off bug bombs will set off all your smoke detectors.
Hey, my wife does not cook very often, but normally when she does, our fire alarm, our smoke detectors get tested. I want to brag real quickly before Ken walks away. Ken is our CPR chair currently, and has been for a number of years. And if you don't know Ken, you ought to know him because he's indicative of the kind of employees we have. He pours his heart and soul into that. And we appreciate greatly it would not be what it is without Ken. Ken has been an example for other people in other cities of how to get things done. He's a good guy.
He takes good pictures too.
Takes good pictures. Can't let people can do anything else.
I don't think there's anybody that doesn't.
Thank you, that was a good report.
You're very welcome.